Welcome to today's State of Greater Western New York report. Hey, do you know what it takes to really market your firm, your organization, your association, whoever you're helping spread the word to? We've got an expert who's done that within the Western New York region for an organization, not just a PR person who's going to tell you generally what to do, but a person with hands-on experience. That's appearing next on the State of Greater Western New York report, which is brought to you by... Each week, our community makes history. Each week, you make history. And each week, there's only one source to turn to for the first take on history. You know what that is? Subscribe to the Sentinel right now to discover the history being made in your own backyard.
The Menden Honeylight Falls Lima Sentinel. More than just your news, it's your history. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Join us each episode as we discuss fantastic topics ranging from history to science to the strange and the wonderful, as well as the treasured spirit with which our region has infused America. We challenge you to consider all things Greater Western New York, from our region's very beginnings to how it inspires, how it empowers, and why it is so admired. Here's the host of the State of Greater Western New York Report, Chris Carosa.
Hey there, and welcome to today's show. I'm Chris Carosa, and you're watching the State of Greater Western New York report. With me today is a very special guest. He's going to tell you some things that, well, I'm sure you've always wondered about, no matter where you are, whether you work for your own firm, whether you're involved with an organization or a community civic association. You're going to want to know how to get the word out, how to really send that image out of that group that you're with, and excite people about it and get them to engage in it. His name is Robert Burns. He's the Director of Marketing at SunnKing. Robert, let's start off. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe how you ended up where you are at right now.
Hey, Chris, appreciate you having me on there. And first off, your studio looks a lot nicer than any of the TV studios that I have worked in. But in saying that, that leads me into how I got to where SunnKing is in Brockport, New York, which is right in the middle between, we're talking about between Buffalo and Rochester. We're serving all of those areas. But I used to be a television news anchor. Hence, I know that chair very well. You have to sit up very proper. And I made that switch on over to this side of things where I'm talking about marketing and I'm talking about branding a couple of years ago. I've done this before, tinkered in and out, but I made the switch to move over here, move closer to family. We'll talk a little bit about that type of demographic later on, but that was the reason why I came here. I found SunnKing. It's an electronics recycler, and I mentioned the area that they serve. SunnKing recycles 25 million pounds of electronics every year. So I'm learning more and more every day that there's a bunch of different devices that we can do. So I'm able to take that TV experience, transition it over to the same type of messaging, but also now into marketing and into branding and making sure that when you're thinking of recycling, I want you to think of SunnKing. And hopefully throughout our conversation, we can work together and get our listeners here to think of how do I make people think of my business, my brand, or my cause when they're thinking about that as well. So I've got a long list of career accomplishments. I've been nominated for 2 Emmys. I've been a main anchor. I've been a reporter. I've been in large markets. I've been in small markets. But I am right here in Western New York, have been and plan to be for a little bit. So again, Chris, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, Robert, let's go back to the studio that you like so much and show both of us here. So I was wondering, in terms of well, actually, before we get there, I want to talk about transitioning from media to marketing. Actually, it's really not that big of a jump because media is marketing. Can you explain maybe what gave you the edge, say, versus other people based on your media experience to enter into a marketing role for a specific company?
I think a lot of the qualities and a lot of the job responsibilities transfer over well. Let's think about it. When you're in, for example, you have to be a very good storyteller. You have to know how to promote those stories. You have to be a very good writer, and you have to be able to pitch people. whether it's a customer or whether it is a PR person or whether it is, anything and any message that you're trying to get across if you've got a cause coming up. So a lot of those things I had done for 12 years were always in here inside of me. And, when you're able to sit down and figure out, well, what am I good at? Holy cow, a lot of that stuff actually lines up with what marketing and branding and PR and all of those different hats kind of entail. Then you start to think it's not that big of a jump. And it's not that uncommon to see people who have worked in television start to switch over and work in media or in content creation or in, marketing or public relations, because it is like a natural transition when either you're just too old for this stuff, you're 2 days from retirement, wherever you are at that standpoint, you are able to, kind of step in and still use those skills that you had worked on. It's just a different capacity. So that's where I think, it was a very comfortable transition for me, but I'm still learning stuff every day, as we all are.
So tell us a little bit about how people can learn, or maybe what you learned. What is the most important thing you've got to take or you've got to have when you get into marketing? Now, marketing, let's just talk generally about marketing first. We can get into PR or maybe sales a little bit later. But just in terms of marketing, it's a strategic thing. What is the one thing that you should focus on if you're going to try to solve a marketing problem?
I think first and foremost, you have to know your message. What's your value? There's this golden circle that I like to use with my team when we try and figure out different campaigns, and we make one big circle, and right in the middle of it is the word. Why are we doing this campaign? Why are we creating this message? Why are we doing this promotion? Whatever it is. And from there, you can peel back other layers and go into, who are we targeting and how are we going to do that? But there's always the why. And people need to think, what is the story of my business? What is the story of this campaign? And then how do we tell that? So you have to know what your business is and why people need it. I mean, obviously you're in business because you're solving a problem for someone. Even if you're selling a product, you're solving a problem with that product. So you have to be able to tell that story in a certain way, but you don't know how to do it unless you know what your purpose is. And I think a lot of people try and jump on in and say, oh, we're going to do a sale, or people aren't finding us because of this. Well, you're not giving them the reason to. You're not connecting with your customers or your audience or whoever it is because you're trying too many different things. So focus on the why, focus on one thing at a time, and I think you're going to get really far, and actually further than you think you will, once you hammer down on what it is you're trying to do and get across. What's the accomplishment at the end of the day? Same thing with your show. You have a why. The why of your show is to inform people about our great area of the state. So you're able to peel back and then work around it. Same concept for any business or cause.
Now let's talk about integrating that into other areas. And let's start with publicity, because that's what you'll do next. You'll have to get that word out somehow. How do you determine the best way to get that message out?
So that's a little trickier, and it's going to take trial and error for anybody out there. And there's software out there that lets you figure out who the right people are to help spread your message. We think of PR, we think of, right off the top, our local news stations or our national or the Today Show or whatever it is, Forbes, whatever it is you're looking to be in. You think of those automatically, but you have to start somewhere. And in public relations, there is no guarantee you're going to get anything. That's part of the joy and part of the problem is even if you're paying someone, they're always going to say, I can't guarantee you coverage, but we sure as heck are going to try. And so you have to try and figure out who are you going to pitch this story to? And is your story even worth it? Did you just hire a manager because, you needed to fill that spot and maybe that person has a local tie? Well, great. Local student gets job. Is that really newsworthy? Probably not. But if you find out what the angle is that makes it important, has this person had any accomplishments? What are their ties to the area? Are they doing anything special with this role? Well, then it becomes more interesting. And then maybe you're not front page, but maybe you're second page, third page, later on in the television show. And then finding those people, the easiest way I could say to do is every news station, every newspaper, every radio station for the most part. Radio's a little trickier, but most of those outlets will have a page on their website that says, these are our staff. This is what they cover. Reach out to us. Tell us a story. And it's an email away or a phone call away. Sometimes there's phone numbers on there. So those would be the easiest ways I would say is figure out what makes your story special. Why is it newsworthy? Hence the word new in the word newsworthy. And then find the person that is right to pitch it to. And then you usually look at the beats that they're covering. If they're covering the sales beat, if they're covering, the business beat, if it's the business journal of wherever you live, if it's Forbes, Moneyline, whatever it is that you're looking for, try and target them specific, because as reporters, and I'll go back to life, we want those pitches. We may not always have the ability to do them, but we want to hear them. Maybe we don't do them today, maybe we do them tomorrow, and that's where you throw your hat in the ring.
Now, can you tell us the difference between what we'll call is earned media, I guess, PR, and purchased media, advertising? What's the difference? How do you twist that message, or how do you change the way you approach it, PR versus advertising?
Well, I think it's very dependent and focused on, and I keep going with those two words, they're very dependent on what you're doing and very focused on what you're doing. So earned media is free. You're holding, you're holding a 4th of July event. Anyone, come one, come all, and you put that out there. The news stations will pick that up. They'll either do 20 seconds, they'll do 2 minutes, they'll put it in the paper, they'll put it online. That's earned media. It costs you nothing to get that message out there to a mass of people. Now, paid media is different because you're actually paying for that. Magazine articles, sometimes they will charge companies to be featured inside of a magazine article, or sometimes they'll charge you to be on a morning show segment. Those are called pay to play. They do have, benefits to them as well. You can go in there, you can say your message, you get that guaranteed spot. You may not necessarily have something super worth being covered for free, but you still have that ability to go about it. And I think that if you're going to do that, know what your pitch is, because you're still going to probably have a minute or so anyway. So you're going to be able to go in there and take advantage of both of those. But keep in mind, when you get either one of those, whether it's earned media or paid media, always think of how are you going to use this later on to recycle your media. Just because it's on television once doesn't mean everyone saw it. Just because they posted on their Twitter feed doesn't mean everyone saw it. You have to do the work as well to make sure that you're posting that work as well on top. Make sure that you're using that same content to kind of double up on your efforts, and heck, even double up on your money if you're doing the paid media or the pay-for-play aspect of it. So you want to have the stations and you want to have the companies do that part of it, but you got to do the legwork and the homework as well. And even if it's just sharing little bits and pieces of it, those little aspects and those little pieces of content add up, and they give you more and more to engage with your community.
I think another thing that's important to remember is even if they do see it, there's research that suggests people need to see it 5, 6, 8 times before they'll actually act on it. So it's got to be recurring. This is one of the common things that I see when people put in a press release to the paper. They'll put it in there and they'll say, "Oh well, nothing happened. It's in the paper, nothing happened." Well, that's because it was only the first time they saw about it. They saw it. You're going to have to drip, drip, drip. So if you're a community organization, maybe you can't pay for advertising, and that's fine. So what you do is you go with what you say. You report what the news is for your organization, but you must continually do it. If you're a historical society that meets monthly, every month you announce the meeting. That's a press release. And then you recap the meeting. That's another press release. So within 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to have 2 articles for your association, and immediately now you're starting to go into the next week, or next month, I should say. So over the course of, say, 3 or 4 months, you're going to have maybe 6 to 8 articles, and that's going to be enough time where people will say, oh yeah, I know about this historical society now. I know that they meet. I know that they have fun meetings. And every once in a while, I'm just going to be a meeting that I want to go to. So that's something that really can't be understated. It's not just advertising. Just don't rely on paid media to get the message out. You've got to rely on this publicity also. Well, let's take a break.
Yeah, and to that point,
ahead.
real quick to that point, you're mentioning, it's got to be 4 or 5 times in there. And same thing to go with, the media outlets as well. If they don't know you and you send them one press release, they're probably not going to look at it twice. But if you continually feed them stories, and it's okay to follow up as well. Hey, I sent this over. Did you get this? Is there anything I can help you with? If you feed media outlets, pictures, video, stories, they will love you forever. So let them get to know you just as much as you want your customers to get to know you. And I swear they're going to start to combine and overlap with each other.
They will. All right, Robert, stay tuned. We'll be right back after this message.
Through the mists of time, nature and man have both created and buried treasures beyond the imagination. With the ages, these riches slowly dissolve into mere myths until they are forever forgotten. But there are those brave souls who tirelessly cling to the truth, ever seeking to discover the undiscovered, to reveal what has always been there, to uncover the hidden gems of a land thought forsaken but loved by millions. 50 Hidden Gems of Greater Western New York. Discover the secrets in your own backyard. Buy your copy now at 50hiddengems.com.
All right, welcome back to the State of Greater Western New York Report. I'm Chris Carosa, and with us today is Robert Burns. He's the Director of Marketing at SunnKing. And now we're going to actually talk about some of the hands-on aspects of what Robert does. So let's start off with SunnKing has a footprint, at least in the Greater Western New York region. So we're going to focus just within on that region. And Robert, tell us a little bit about the approaches that you use specifically within our region. And I could show that thing that you've got me to run anytime you want.
Yep.
So just let me know and I'll put it on. But just start with the approaches. How do you approach the Greater Western New York market?
I think you had it as, who are my neighbors? Who are we talking to from a business standpoint? I mean, and we keep saying a business standpoint, but it can be any message that you're looking for. You could run a nonprofit, like you said. You could, have a particular function that you're looking to do or a cause you're looking to spearhead. So you have to think, like, who are my neighbors? What do we like to do here? Are you a very environmentally conscious neighborhood? Some places are more than others. We can talk about, specific cities or specific counties that have greener initiatives than others. But you got to know what's in there. And you have to figure out, is that where I want to go? Am I talking about, Monroe County, or am I talking about Erie County? Because while they are the same people, they have different likes, they have different dislikes and activities. One thing that we'll try and do is, if we're focusing on something in Buffalo, we know everybody loves the Buffalo Bills. If you can put something together, Buffalo Bills like, they will interact with it, whether you're putting it out on social media or even if it's just inside your place. Here in Rochester, we sponsor recycling-focused games for the Rochester Americans, the minor league hockey team. And so, we have Global Recycling Day, we have, Earth Day, things that we try to promote. And one of those things it's coming up is Global Recycling Day. And to do that, we're banking off of the fact that we are also starting our free electronics recycling collections. They're open to anyone. You can go there. That's our target market, is residential customers. So who goes to hockey games? Who goes to Amherst games? Local residential customers. And so, we're able to put this 30-second ad together that's going to run on the radio, and it also runs on in the arena. It's one of those pay-to-play aspects that we talked about in the previous segment because we paid for the sponsorship, but it's a great way to get our message across. So we put together a quick 30-second ad. You'll listen to it. You'll watch it. Regardless, we talk about all the devices that we have. We talk about how they're so complex and what do we do with them after we use them. And most people don't know that this service is there, that they can drop off their devices, their electronics, for free, and then they responsibly get recycled from there. There's no, data privacy issues. There's no sort of concerns with what happens to the material afterwards. We're very transparent within the company, especially since I've started here, in showing the process of what we do. And so in 30 seconds, we try to get that message across. and then let you know where to go. You got to tell people or give them that call to action. And so we let them know the website. It's sunking.com/events. And it's got to be something engaging, something that gets your eyes moving, quick, fast-paced clips, ready to roll. So, Chris, if we have it, we'll give it one more try.
Sure, here we go.
Electronics recycling can be confusing. All of our devices, they are complex, most of them filled with glass, plastics, metals, which can be turned into new products. That's when I search SunnKing. Any leftover devices or charging cords around the house, I feel good about recycling with SunnKing. They destroy my personal data and responsibly recycle what's left. They even hold free recycling events here in Rochester. Visit sunking.com/events to recycle your devices right. That's sunking.com/events.
No, I didn't hear the audio on my end, but if you heard it, then you would realize that voice sounds very familiar. It is me. So we do all the stuff in-house. It doesn't cost us any extra to kind of go outside. But I think the point of it, Chris, is to kind of focus on, our audience, our residential customers. We know who they are. We know where they're going to be. And we now know the way to get to them with our message. And so we're trying to utilize that in as many different ways as possible, trying email campaigns, trying social media, trying the in-game campaigns. So if you can focus on who are you targeting, where are they going to be, and then what's your best option to get to them or to get your message to them, it's going to be a lot easier because it's just doing that research beforehand that a lot of people try and shy away from.
So I apologize for that little snafu on your end, Robert, but as you know, in post-production, things can happen that'll make it good. So if you're watching the replay of this, you wouldn't even know there was no sound on that little ad there. So, Robert, tell us a little bit about the commonalities of the greater Western New York region. I mean, you mentioned the Buffalo Bills. I mean, certainly that's probably true. I know the Sabres, they also managed to market themselves regionally, even through the Amherst, like where you're going with this ad. But tell us some other sort of commonalities that are pretty much sure things. It's going to work within the greater Western New York region.
Yeah, a lot of it is seasonal too. We have those seasons here and people are either very heavy into, winter season or they're heavy into hiking in springtime and, going out and seeing the beautiful areas and parks that we have here as well. So those are two things that I would try and think to take advantage of. If you're looking at a food aspect of it, everybody loves chicken wings. Everybody loves pizza. Is there some way that you can kind of combine your, prowess to join up with, those two particular things, or maybe you're hosting an event and it's free pizza and wings. People will show up for that type of stuff. We have pizza parties, Pizza Friday, every first Friday of the month here at SunnKing. And we know our employees love that. So we know to keep bringing other things. We've tried ice cream, we've tried coffee. They want pizza, they want wings. We know what they want. So, depending on your region and where you are, like, again, if you're in Buffalo, and it's, Italian festival season, obviously, the route to go. That makes sense for your business. There's always a festival. There's always something that you can kind of tie into or do some sort of promotion with. And a lot of it banks on what your business is. If we're talking about your podcast, obviously you have more leeway than most people. You can go to the Lilac Festival. You can do all types of things. If you're a food truck, then you're kind of limited to going to specific places that allow you to have the food truck, but you can get your message out in a wider area too, because we know Western New Yorkers, and right here in the Finger Lakes, we love food trucks when they're out and about.
So now tell us the difference between marketing, say, in the Western New York region and marketing downstate or, the New York Albany area. What's the differences between the two regions?
Yeah, even if you look at just kind of let's focus on Rochester towards focusing on New York City. They are technically the same state, but they are two completely different lifestyles. You're talking city life and suburb life. You're talking an Apple store you can walk to versus one Apple store in a 45-minute drive. So your audience that you're playing with there, they're going to be drastically different. Whereas Finger Lakes and Western New York, Monroe County, Erie County, they're going to like things maybe a little bit slower if you're looking at a commercial. Maybe not using nightlife music in the background, maybe showing the activities that we can do here as opposed to New York where there's a million different things. And then keeping that in mind, like even focusing on, as you and I talked about, Chris, focusing on Rochester and the Buffalo area versus focusing on Erie, Pennsylvania. It's a different lifestyle down there. You may not know it, but people in New York City think in Erie, Pennsylvania, they're still riding around in horse and buggy everywhere and trying to find electricity. Well, that's not the same type of market that you're looking for to target in this particular area. So you got to know where you're going, and I think if you're a nightclub, it makes sense. If you are a high end museum or something like that, then going with that New York route stuff works. But just seeing it work in one market doesn't mean it's going to work in our market here, because the people that we have, they're hardworking people here in Rochester and Buffalo. They like their bills, they like their sports, they like their pizza and their wings. Whereas New York City, you got pizza and bagels. So focus on what you are used to, but take some ideas from those bigger cities as well, because something works. And you can, but I wouldn't go all in.
You gave me an idea or a type of question, is that there's a lot of civic organizations, say Rotary, Kiwanis, Masons, things like
Lions,
that.
yep.
That Lions, they're all state-based. I mean, they're regional. They have regional aspects, but they're also state-based. So they might take direction in terms of the whole state. How might those organizations approach things differently from region to region? Again, they're different than businesses. So businesses, I think it's pretty, you kind of describe what they do. But what about these civic associations? How might they differentiate their message between, say, New York City and Western New York?
I think if you look at a lot of them too, while they are larger organizations, they're local chapters, right? Most of them are. I have one in Webster, right near my home, where it's, right on the corner. So they're going to focus on Webster. They're really hyper local, is what we call that. What is your neighborhood in a 5-10 mile radius? So those things are going to be a little bit more focused and targeted. It's not like Macy's, where they're going to email you something that's going to go globally and that's what you get and you go with that copy. They have more leeway to do that. And I think you focus on your local news, your Democrat and Chronicle, your WIBV, your IVB, your KBWs, your local stations and your local outlets, because that is where your group of people are going to be. That's where your community is. I know for a fact that, they work very closely with the restaurants that are right across the street and the sports bars that are right across the street. And if they have some sort of, collection or a fundraiser or what have you, they're very locally focused, whether it's in, like I said, whether it's in Webster or Pittsburgh or whether it's in Tonawanda. So, I think that they can always focus more on their hometown, because the people who go in there, they live in a certain radius, and they're very loyal to that brand too. They're not going to be, hopping from one organization to the other just because the drink specials are better. So, you know who your people are. You just have to make sure that you give them a reason to keep coming back. So engagement is the most important thing. Getting them involved is the most important thing. And they do a great job of it already. There's always more to do though.
Right. And you actually, you're prompting an idea for maybe a future show on the whole idea of cross-promotional type activities. That's the example that you were giving, and I think that's really a good way for companies and organizations to spread their brand message out, because there's overlapping markets, different products, different services, different things that you're pitching, so it's not like you're in competition with each other. So maybe at some future date we can talk about that. Well, Robert, thanks for being part of today's show. I want to thank everybody who's watching, whether you're watching live and asking some of the questions that I filtered through to Robert here. And if you're watching on our website or on our Facebook page or YouTube channel. Remember, this is rebroadcast every Sunday at 1:30 on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. It appears live on our Zoom platform every Thursday at noon. If you want to receive an invite for that, then just go to stateof.greaterwesternnewyork.com and you'll be able to enjoy watching this live and maybe even get your own question answered. With that, Robert, thank you one more time, and everyone in the audience, we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye for now.